The update hit every mission control room at the same time, an alert so jarring that seasoned scientists stopped mid-sentence. Without warning, 3I, Atlas had completely halted its inward dive toward the sun, freezing in space with precision no comet, asteroid, or interstellar object has ever demonstrated. There was no gradual slowdown, no fading momentum. Its velocity graph slammed into a perfect horizontal line, as if some invisible force had clamped down on it. At ESO, solar vector monitors picked up something even more disturbing, a tiny oscillation, a twitch in its path so deliberate that several astronomers swore it looked like correction, the kind of micro-movement a pilot makes when stabilizing craft. Moments later, the Punch mission detected a thin, focused plume firing away from the sun, subtle but undeniable. But when analysts calculated the thrust needed to counteract solar gravity at that distance, the room fell silent. The energy required was thousands of times higher than anything known from cometary sublimation. In simple terms, no natural object could do that. Whispers began spreading through NASA's deep space control. Maybe the object wasn't merely resisting gravity. Maybe it was ignoring it. Then Juice delivered the next blow. Thermal readings showed zero correlation between its sudden stop and any physical impact event. There was no heating, no shock wave, no structural distortion. A real comet should have shattered instantly at that level of forced deceleration. But 3I, Atlas remained pristine, as if the laws of physics simply didn't apply to it. Its behavior matched nothing in known astrophysics, except perhaps a drone pausing at a programmed waypoint. 3 major observatories, Mauna Kea, La Silla, and Helmos, recalibrated their instruments in panic, convinced something had malfunctioned. But each one returned the same result. The object had chosen to stop, and then more anomalies stacked like falling dominoes. Every gravitational model broke at the same time. The coma around the object dimmed by 46%, as if the object were conserving energy. A barely detectable 0.03-degree directional pivot suggested it was preparing for a new maneuver. Across multiple frequency bands, 3I, Atlas went radio silent, absorbing every signal but emitting nothing. Dr. Renlow, the usually unshakable astrophysicist, coined a new term out of fear, gravitational refusal. Space agencies quietly escalated internal threat levels. No press releases, no warnings. The stop wasn't random. The stop wasn't natural. The stop was intentional. And behind every closed-door meeting, the same question echoed like a quiet, rising alarm. What is 3I, Atlas waiting for? And that question is what leads directly into the next revelation. It began with a shock so impossible that even mission control teams froze mid-sentence. One moment, 3I, Atlas was racing through the solar system at interstellar velocity, far faster than anything born inside our sun's domain, and the next, its speed collapsed to zero in less than 18 seconds. Every physicist who saw the live telemetry felt the same chill. No natural comet is capable of this. Nothing with mass should stop that fast without breaking apart, vaporizing, or exploding. And yet, 3I, Atlas remained perfectly intact. The first clue came from a flicker, so faint, so brief, that stereo almost dismissed it as sensor noise. A microflare, a pin-sized burst of energy from the comet's surface. Too small to matter, too strange to ignore. And as that microflare vanished, its forward momentum didn't slow, it fell off a cliff. One clean vertical drop on the graph, like someone hit an emergency stop button on an engine that shouldn't exist. Then the solar wind screamed. A low-frequency pulse rippled outward, vibrating through plasma streams across millions of kilometers. Instruments all over the world glitched in the same instant. Punch detected something even more disturbing. Waveforms inside the pulse, structured, patterned, intentional. Not random turbulence. Not comet behavior. More like a signal. Scientists tried to recreate the shutdown in simulations hundreds of times. Every single one ended in catastrophic fragmentation. Total destruction. Yet the real object didn't crack, didn't flare, didn't lose a single grain of dust. Instead, its glowing coma shrank violently inward, tightening into a shape that looked disturbingly geometric. Observers described it as though the comet were folding itself into a shell, hiding something inside, or preparing for something else altogether. Magnetic readings jumped so high that engineers thought the equipment had failed. But the spikes suddenly leveled off, with precision no natural object should have. It looked less like a comet and more like a device, shifting modes, entering a controlled idle state. Then came the moment space agencies could no longer stay silent. Japanese researchers released their emergency analysis. 3I. Atlas had created a perfect energy null around itself, a bubble where drag, heat, and gravitational influence dropped to almost nothing. Something was actively managing the environment around the object, not reacting, controlling. Quiet voices inside research teams said the words nobody wanted to hear. This isn't physics anymore. This is behavior. And then the final twist hit, hard enough to drain the color from every analyst's face. Minutes after stopping dead in space, 3I, Atlas slowly rotated and locked onto Earth. Not drifting, not tumbling, not wobbling like a natural body. It aligned deliberately, steadily, unmistakably. And what it aligned for would ignite the next wave of panic. The moment humanity was still trying to understand how 3I, Atlas had stopped in open space, a second anomaly struck, one so precise, so targeted, that global research teams froze in disbelief. The comet had rotated, not gradually, but with a sudden mechanical snap, turning a single face directly toward Earth. Its natural spin simply halted, as if something inside it made a decision. Analysts in mission rooms across Europe and the U.S. watched the feed in real time. 3I, Atlas wasn't tumbling anymore. It was aiming. The locked orientation was too perfect, too conscious. It stared at Earth with a steady focus of an instrument calibrating its view. Then the brightness changed. Not randomly. Not from sunlight or venting gas. The light pulsed clean, rhythmic, almost metronomic. Scientists compared the timing and felt their blood run cold. The pulses matched Earth's magnetic oscillations. Not similar. Not close. Exact. Each flicker aligned to changes in our magnetic field, as if the object were syncing with it or studying it. Minutes later, ESA's JUICE probe detected twin jets firing from opposite sides of the comet's surface, symmetrical thrust, perfectly balanced. Not the chaotic, lopsided bursts comets usually produce. These jets acted like stabilizers, adjusting orientation with purpose. The comet wasn't drifting. It was steering. Then came the image that split the scientific community in half. Punch's high-contrast scan revealed a faint triangular dark region beneath the sunlit ice. Sharp edges, straight lines, geometry that nature does not create. Something solid was embedded deep inside, something shaped. Thermal maps added another layer of fear. A localized hotspot was forming, rising slowly, but always pointing toward Earth as the planet moved. It tracked our rotation with eerie precision, like a spotlight following its target. Within hours, the European Space Council quietly labeled the phenomenon active tracking behavior. The term leaked. Panic followed. Mathematicians ran probability models late into the night. The odds of a natural comet aligning with Earth so perfectly were lower than 1 in 700 billion, lower than chance, lower than luck, almost as if the alignment was intentional. And the pulses? They grew stronger whenever they struck the ionosphere. Ground stations recorded disruptions, weak but undeniably synchronized. Radio bands flickered. Deep space antennas glitched. Every signal disturbance matched a brightness pulse from 3I, Atlas with impossible accuracy. Researchers watching the screens felt the same sinking realization. The object wasn't just facing Earth. It was responding to Earth. Then, at the peak of the activity, just as the pulses reached their brightest, just as the hot spot locked perfectly onto Earth's magnetic pole, everything stopped. No pulses, no jets, no heat signatures, no rotation. The comet went dead silent, like something holding its breath. Too silent, too controlled, too deliberate. And just as the world asked what it was preparing for, a new signal appeared, one no one had ever seen before. The moment scientists thought they finally understood the strange orbital halt of 3I, Atlas, A new shock tore through every control room on Earth. Without warning, the object's energy signature collapsed, not weakened, not fluctuated, but vanished, as if someone flipped a cosmic switch. In the live telemetry stream, thermal readings plunged toward absolute zero, a temperature no known comet could ever reach while bathing in full sunlight. It should have been boiling with heat. Instead, it froze instantly. The laws of thermodynamics shattered in front of them. Engineers watched in disbelief as the comet's glowing coma, its natural gas halo, blinked out existence, peeling away to reveal a disturbingly clean outline. It wasn't jagged or uneven like normal comet nuclei. It was smooth, curved in some places, sharp in others. The kind of symmetry that looked constructed, not carved by nature. One analyst whispered that the surface resembled metal, but no one dared repeat it. Then came the detail that silenced every room. 3I. Atlas was casting a shadow on the solar wind, a distortion wave rippling through charged particles exactly as though something with its own field was pushing them aside. Comets don't do that. Nothing in space does that. NASA's stereo probe captured the next anomaly, a circular ripple exploding outward from the object, expanding like a shock wave as if 3I. Atlas had activated a barrier or system, and right as the ripple reached the observing spacecraft, all four missions, Hubble, JUICE, Stereo, and Punch, experienced a simultaneous blackout. Not minutes, not seconds, 0.45 seconds exactly. Synchronized to the millisecond, when the data stream snapped back on, the entire object looked different. Its silhouette was no longer rounded. The top ridge had sharpened into a geometric edge, and the lower section now reflected light in straight planes, almost polygonal. Researchers exploded into debate. Accusations flew. Someone blamed corrupted code. Someone else blamed solar interference. But when cross-checks came in from separate nations, separate systems, and separate timestamps, the truth hit them harder than any glitch. The shape change was real. Something inside the object had moved, reconfigured, transformed. Then solar brightness measurements revealed another impossibility. A faint, precise lensing effect bleeding from the comet's center, bending sunlight in a controlled, almost engineered pattern. It wasn't gravitational. It wasn't natural. It behaved like a mechanism coming online. Physicists began arguing in panic. No natural body can show negative thermal drift. No comet cools to near zero while approaching the sun. No object shifts geometry mid-flight. And finally, one theory, spoken quietly at first, spread across every monitoring team like a cold wave of dread. Maybe 3I. Atlas didn't stop because it ran out of energy. Maybe it didn't stop because something slowed it down. Maybe it stopped because it finished something. A phase, a transition, a transformation. Something inside it had just activated. And that activation was only the beginning of what would come next. The moment global observatories finally stabilized their tracking of 3I, Atlas, the universe delivered a twist no one was prepared for. Seconds after the comet's impossible, instantaneous stop, Earth received something no simulation had ever warned about. A structured signal. Not in radio waves, not in light, not in anything humans had ever used to communicate. This message arrived inside the solar wind itself. The Punch mission detected it first. Anomalous fluctuations in charged particles forming patterns too deliberate, too clean to be natural. Every burst repeated an exact interval of 19 seconds, the kind of mathematical precision that made veteran physicists go pale. Analysts stared at their screens as the data resolved into embedded ratios that followed the same logic as prime number distributions, the universal fingerprints of intelligent design. It wasn't noise. It wasn't random. It was math on purpose. As teams cross-checked the signal with weeks of stored telemetry, another discovery surfaced. The rhythm of the pulses perfectly echoed 3I. Atlas's observed rotation, decay from earlier in the month. It meant the object had been adjusting its spin, preparing this transmission long before it ever stopped. Nothing about this comet was accidental. Then Hubble delivered the image that froze every lab into silence. Deep inside the object's core, a faint, rhythmic glint appeared, flashing in perfect sync with each pulse of the signal. Spectral readings indicated internal energy cycling. a pattern disturbingly similar to a reactor slowly spooling up. At the same time, JUICE detected microbursts of ionized particles spiraling outward from the comet, forming a controlled, symmetrical structure that no known natural object produces. And when cryptographers ran deeper analysis on the solar wind signal, one detail pushed the situation into full crisis. The signal changed every time Earth's magnetic field fluctuated, not just reacting, adapting, not just adapting, responding. Atlas wasn't simply broadcasting. It was listening, watching, engaging. Then, minutes later, a final log entry appeared in Stereo's internal feed, an automated alert originally dismissed as a glitch, until 3 separate systems confirmed it. Trajectory shift detected. Object no longer bound to solar gravity. In other words, Atlas is preparing to move again. But this time, the direction won't be determined by physics. It will move on its own terms. And what happens next becomes the opening shock of the next part.